people can make the type of decisions that you want them to make. But then you've got to let them operate, let them breathe.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to the Packard Network Live. I really appreciate everybody tuning in here, and I have a very special guest today, somebody that I've known for what's approaching now 2 decades from prior corporate lives. Claire Mackinnon, live from London, is joining the program. Claire, welcome to the program today.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, that's great. You're most welcome. And Claire is the founder and director of Claire Mackinnon Coaching. And I'm just going to spend a minute or so giving you the major, a great introductory piece on Claire. And she's basically on a mission to help leaders transform themselves and widen the impact that they have on other people, which is why one of the reasons why I've invited her on the program, because as leaders, it's all about impact. And, you know, we can talk about legacy and all sorts of stuff, however you want to define it. But really, a leader's job is to make others feel great and to perform at their full potential. And Claire has the background, experience, and she's currently practicing this in her business to actually help people make that big impact. So we're going to talk a bit about her journey and why she's doing that, and how she helps people as well over the next half hour. And Claire has extensive experience in coaching and professional development, leadership development. She provides one-on-one coaching, group coaching. There's workshops. So we'll talk a bit about that at the end. And she also helps people in career transition. So a lot of, with whether it's the global financial crisis in the mid 2000s or right now, as we all know, it's the pandemic era, which is what I think we need to call it. This has become an era. It's hard to believe we're going on a couple of years now. And there are a lot of people in career transition as the landscape of the economy has changed due to the pandemic, with, consumers are behaving differently now than they were before the pandemic. And now we have things like inflation is on the rise. And so lots of behavioral change, and that is leading to a lot of people in career transition. That when I made the announcement the other day about Claire coming on the program, many of you reached out to me that are actually in career transition. So I appreciate you tuning into this, and I'm quite confident that you're going to pick up some useful advice and inspiration from Claire. Claire has 15 years of experience, including 12 years in financial services, and also she has performed some senior human resource roles. So she has done far more in large corporations than just coaching and professional leadership. She has performed generalist functions in HR in large companies as well. So she has a very strong backbone, and she's also been in client contact areas in financial services, if you go back to some of the beginnings of her career, and that's great. So she knows where money is made and lost in companies, and that's vital when you're developing leaders as well. And I was speaking with somebody the other day, I forgot from where, and I call it the steel building syndrome, where in big companies, what often happens is that you have people sitting in unfortunately the C-suite and other executive positions, and they're trying to figure out, how do I make money? And there's more often than not, and based on my experience, there is not an understanding that the money's not made and lost in that building. It's probably lost in that building, but it's made and lost at the client level, and that type of thing. So Claire has a lot of experience on that front as well. Claire is also a professional certified coach, PCC, with the ICF, and she's a certified leadership circle practitioner, and which, by the way, is a cutting edge 360-degree tool for leaders to scale their leadership. And I've been through many 360-degree reviews. And if you have not lately, I strongly suggest that you do that as a leader. It's one of the most beneficial tools. Speak from somebody speaking as a former business manager and CEO, that you can have to further develop and cultivate your leadership. So with that, I'm going to take a breather for 10 seconds. Claire, welcome to the program again. It's great to have you here, along with all of your credentials and your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Yeah.
Sure, you're welcome. Why don't we just start we'll now have you talk 80% of the time and me 20 for the rest of this. But I think that why don't we just go back, if you don't mind, and maybe talk about how and why you've built all of these credentials, and you've been enormously successful. You've also taken the leap, as I just described, from corporate life into running your own business and helping other people make an impact on the world, right? And what they do. And did you design this? It's a big question, and I know it covers a couple of decades, but maybe you could kind of talk about how you became so successful.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't design this, what I'm doing now. I feel like, it's been a journey, and what I do now, which I'm incredibly passionate about, is very much inspired by my own journey, my own experiences that I had in corporate, and for all the wonderful things you said about my credentials and the success I achieved, which are absolutely true. I guess the part of the story that sits beneath that is that I often found, getting to those milestones, having those achievements, progressing my way through to bigger roles, I often found that journey very challenging. And I was making life a lot harder for myself than it needed to be. This is what I know now. Kind of like driving with the brake on. So the experience, whilst I was, making these moves and moving into roles that held more and more meaning for me, I often felt kind of consumed by work. And I don't think I was bringing my true best. I think there was more I could have brought in those moments, in those different leadership roles. So I guess the journey that I help people make now is, and I guess I work with leaders who can relate to what I've just said, who have this feeling of, I'm achieving, but it feels like it's coming at too great a cost. I
think that's a good, exactly. If I could just interject there for a second, I think that's a great point, because, there's a lot of people that I know, Claire, and some of them reached out to me after they saw the announcement that that you're going to be on the program this week, that they're very successful, but yet how's it possible to be successful, but they're not really happy with what they're doing? And so are you saying, was that you before?
It was me. It was. And I had, I guess, a number of wake up calls, moments where and it took a while, but I guess I could notice this growing feeling of dissatisfaction, despite, I'd go for a promotion, get the job I thought I really wanted, and almost you think you'd be popping the champagne, but it was like, yay. And then almost a flatness coming back. And okay, so then I reached a point where I was like, well, why am I doing this? What is it all for? And part of it was about, moving towards work and really believing in the outcome that I was part of delivering. So, I started off in sales teams, frontline role, serving customers, leading big operational teams. And I learned so much from that time. And it really gave me a foundation in leadership. But I did notice, I didn't want to just keep going up that chain and becoming more and more senior in that hierarchy. And I saw my colleagues in HR. This is, one example, I guess, of a shift. And I thought, this to me feels more meaningful. Like I can help people as they're on their leadership journey. So I think this was like an early sign of what was to come. And then, in answer to your question about, how have I kind of made this happen? I think I've really listened to that. So when I've had those thoughts, when my intuition has kicked in and said, oh, is there something for you over here? I've really listened to that, paid attention to it, and then taken a step towards that. And it has involved leaps of faith, making sideways moves when, I could have gone up, moving from financial services to a non-profit so I could do a big HR director role in a smaller organization. People that I, who love me dearly said at that point, Claire, what are you doing? Why are you leaving a well-known brand to go and work for this company no one's ever heard of? But I knew, that it held meaning for me. So I think part of it is like trusting, if anyone's listening to this and interested in making similar journeys, kind of trusting yourself. And when you notice that feeling of unhappiness, it's easy to distract yourself from it.
That's a very powerful point. And I can tell you that when I've taken those leaps of faith in my career and bold moves, and people around me in the business, they say, what in the world, why in the world are you doing that? And, we have a choice, right? We can either listen to them or listen to ourselves. And that to me, Claire, what you just said is a very powerful piece of advice to people, is that you can listen to others and you should take that input. It's a great quality. But at the end of the day, who is your boss, right?
Yes.
It's you. And you were your boss, and that I think that's a very powerful point. Claire, I've got a question. Where in your career journey was the trigger point that you needed to start this? What should I call it? A new journey, or just kind of you're recalibrating your career? Maybe that's the proper word for it. But please, was there a trigger point for that?
I mean, there's two that really stand out in my mind, but the first was, and it was nothing very dramatic, but I was part of a talent program. I was kind of in a room with 30 other people who'd been selected to be part of this program. And this very quiet, unassuming speaker came to run a session with us. And he had this tool where it basically helped you look at your whole life, almost like a pie. And the different parts that make up our life, work being one of them, but also our personal relationships, fun, spirituality, whatever it is for you. And I know it sounds very now obvious, but it was the first time I'd actually sat back and considered, well, what does success look like in all these segments? Because I guess I just kind of bought into this. I think it's very entrenched in our culture that, work is everything, and I was kind of achieving for achievement's sake, but not really knowing why. And it caused me to pause and think, well, where do I want to take my career? But also it had me realize that there were other parts of my life I was neglecting, that I could place a little more time and energy in. And so that was I was fairly young then. I was in my late 20s. So I'm so glad that he walked in the room. I still write to him now.
That's fascinating to me. So let me make sure that I have this right. Okay. So you're in a corporate talent program inside of a corporation. So and then obviously, our lives are split into three areas. There's work, there's family or personal life living, and there's sleep, right? So are you telling me that in a corporate talent program that you actually were able to see other elements of your life, your living and your sleeping, etc., your personal life? So this corporate program highlighted those were areas that needed some attention?
Yeah, and it was, I think now this is very common in talent programs, but I think back then it was pretty innovative, and it was a very small piece. He was just one speaker of many, but it made
a big impact on you.
On me. And I think I remember some people like, this is all a bit, what's this got to do with why we're here? But it really spoke to me, and it just created a little opening. And after that, I I did reflect, and I thought, well, I've thought about going to HR. Well, okay, I can. So what am I going to do about it then? And I started to have conversations. I decided to really back myself, and I asked my organisation if they'd sponsor me to do my professional qualification in HR. And they said, we'll pay for some of it, but you can pay for the rest. And I was like, okay, deal. So because I knew I could probably make a sideways move if I committed. So yeah, that was a real moment.
That's fantastic. And I just, if I could pause for a second, sometimes the littlest things, I come from the school that I truly believe that the little things matter and they add up. The big things, they're always in front of you. And I've said on this program numerous times, a great mentor of mine, Mr. Herb Myers, back in the San Francisco days in the 1990s, would always say, it's the little things that'll get you. Okay. But also the little things can make the huge impact, right? And this might have been a little thing that maybe the other 29 people in the room didn't pick up on what you did. I don't know that, you may not know that either, but for you, it changed the course of your career, right? So always pay attention. Here's the point of the story. Pay attention to the little things, because those little things around you add up to make you, right, eventually, right? Absolutely. Big things are always in your face. So, they're never going to let you, they're never going to leave you alone. But these little things, if you can just open your eyes and feel your feet on the ground, right? And when you're walking, when was the last time that all of us did that? It can really make a big difference because it gets you to pay more attention to the present moment.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because these are exactly the kind of things he was talking about. So he was talking about meditation, and I remember him talking about mindful walking. The other thing about, and again, little things is, I think what I started to do from that moment was I dreamed up a vision of, in 10 years time, what would I love my life to look like? What kind of work would I love to be doing? What were people saying to me? And I'd never, again, he taught me this technique. I'd never thought of doing something like that before. And then I just started to take like micro steps towards that each day. So it's that, I think it's so easy, and particularly if you're in a busy corporate role and you're trying your best to deliver for your customers and your colleagues now, to hold that future, your own kind of where you want to take your life and career, and create space for it. So I'm a real believer in, almost before you do anything else in the morning, what is one thing, even if it's for 10 minutes, you're sending someone a message or researching something that's going to take you there, because to your point, it all starts to accumulate, and before you know it, one of those tiny actions has led to something really cool happening that's the leap
exactly
towards it. So,
yeah, that's very well articulated. And so you had a blueprint and 10-ish years out. If you were to just fast forward that 10 years, did it look exactly like you envisioned, or 75% of what you envisioned? And that's my first question. Second question is, was it linear?
Yes, so I actually have the notebook still that I wrote that in, and I'd say it's like 75%. I didn't imagine myself being self-employed. I imagined myself being this go-to person in organizations, supporting people grow. But yeah, it's when I read it back, it's quite uncanny, but it hasn't been linear. So
life is not linear, right, Claire?
No, it isn't. And I think there's that piece around, we can have idea of something we think we want, whether it be a job or a client we'd love to work with, or whatever it is. And then we're going to be just like, I think there's something about, we're going to be disappointed. And I think there's something powerful if we can kind of almost, we're going to feel it. Of course, if we're really going for something, we're putting our heart into it, we're going to feel it. But then if we can also think, okay, well, what is this opening up? It's a no over here, but okay, what can I learn from this? if I'm going to go from that again,
Mm.
what might be different? So yeah, there have been various, you know, I have had lots of disappointments and knockbacks and all of that, but it's all led me to where I'm sitting here, and I love what I do, and I find it very meaningful.
Mhm.
And if it was a straight line, it would be boring, right? We wouldn't.
Yeah, and it's not real life,
learning.
right? And I knew the answer to that question. It was a leading question, but I think you're right. Now, Claire, when you run into an obstacle or a challenge, which makes it not linear, right? And we all do that. How do you have a tolerance for how long you're down, or how do you bounce back, or what is your method? Is it something outside of work that you do, or, you know, how do you kind of bounce back and get back on track so that you pull out that blueprint again and you're back on course on your 10-year plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I continue to practice. And I think it's fair to say my bounce back time has got shorter. I don't know if it's going to get any shorter than it is now. I don't know. I mean, I think there's something for me when, I have a setback and, you know, you get those difficult emotions, to actually allow myself to feel it. You know, I think actually doing that can make it move through more quickly. Whereas if it's like, okay, you know what, oh no, why am I feeling like this? I'm going to just carry on and pretend I'm not feeling like this. I think it can linger longer. So that's one thing. But I do have a pretty robust kind of commitment to doing things each day that have nothing to do with work, that do kind of resource me, really. So I've written
such as
I've shared a bit about this on LinkedIn. So I do. So one thing that I do. So I loved. I got back into dancing a few years ago, when I was actually at a low point in my journey. Started doing salsa, and doing that every week. You know, it was the last thing you'd think. I was entrenched in this massive kind of ongoing merger, and it was really tough at work. But I did kind of say, you've got to do something that's fun. Something told me to do that, and I'm going out and dancing less now, but I do every day. I don't meditate, but I do dance for 5 or 10 minutes. And it, to me, just kind of, it just starts my day off right. And
so you're centered, it centers you, and you're ready to stay on the track. Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
and I do believe it helps me recover more quickly when things feel harder. It's kind of builds my resilience. But I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm doing it because it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of your rituals. You do it regularly.
A ritual. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's great. You know, habits are either healthy or unhealthy, or discipline habits. I call them the same thing. And I think it's wonderful to have that self-discipline, you know, around doing something, whether the sun's out or it's raining outside, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because they make us better people, and they also enable us to bounce back when things do go wrong. You know, I liken this a bit to the pilot. You know, let's say we're flying somewhere and it's just a terrible day, and the plane manages to get off the ground and it's bumpy, but you know, within 10 minutes, you've got a beautiful blue sky all around you. And, you know, and life is that way as well. And it may not be linear like we spoke about, but it certainly is something that, you know, we can stay on track and eventually arrive at our destination. So I think that's great. Claire, what are you most proud of if you look over the course of your entire career? What's the one thing that you're most proud of?
I guess it's less than one achievement, and it's more, I think, just being willing to try things. And I feel, and this isn't something, I guess I feel proud of it because this is something I have found hard in the past, actually creating things, putting them out into the world, whether that be a video or a LinkedIn post or a workshop, and just kind of following the inspiration, putting it out there, and not being attached to whether people like it or whether people come. You know, I have offered things, you know, and there's been very little interest, and that's information, you know, that's feedback. I've offered other things and had a really warm response. And that does feel, you know, that feels vulnerable. No, none of us, I don't think anyone enjoys offering something and there being, you know, radio silence. You know, we're doing it because we want to make a difference. But I think that I'm developing, and I'm still on that journey, but I'm kind of developing a capacity to do that more and more. And then when I see the impact then of when I do offer, you know, I offered a little workshop out to my community last week. And yeah, I did have a few nerves around it. It was a bit different to other topics that I've done in the past. But then when I was reading the comments afterwards in the chat and I heard from a few people, I was like, oh, that was totally worth it. And now I can make it better. I can tweak this. I don't think that worked as well as it could have done. But I think, you know, that's very different to how I used to be almost scared to make mistakes. I didn't want to be seen to be making mistakes in public or what might people think if I post this and no one comments or whatever. So just kind of moving through some of that. I feel kind of, like that's for me, it's a big achievement.
That's wonderful. And, you know, my opinion of that, Claire, knowing you as I know you, is that is because at the core, you're a genuine person. And, you know, when you're genuine and you're authentic, you know, you're sure it's coming from your brain, but it's also coming from your heart. Right. And it's okay to get nervous. Actually, a little bit of adrenaline in all of us is a good thing. Right. And so I think it's, it's part of that's learning and growing. And, you know, you can get that adrenaline going or nerves or whatever you want to call it. And, you know, convert that into, don't let it scare you. And you don't. I think you just described that, but I always tell people, convert your fear into energy. Because you're going to do something with that time that you're afraid, right? So you might as well just flip it over and do something, right? And have that energy with it. And you know, that's I think you're doing it. You and I both said it differently, but that's what you do, right? Is you do convert it to energy and you keep moving forward. And that's great, Claire. Claire, I'd like to talk just for a couple of minutes about an important subject that I have a lot of women on this program, and not 100%, but well over 50%, and people from all around the world in different cultures, right? And the women I have on this program are incredibly successful as they define it, and also as I define it. And we all define it differently. And I define success as a successful person is doing what they want to do. It's a very simple definition. You're probably not going to see it in an MBA course. But anyway, I define you as a successful person. Okay. And you happen to be a woman because you're doing what you want to do. It may have taken you a while to find it, as it did me and everybody else, but you are a success. But let's face it, there are some challenges that women face in the business world, right? And maybe more so in the corporate world, but even entrepreneurs face challenges and that type of thing. In your view, what can men do to better support that? And what should women do to continue pushing forward? Because, most of the successful people that I know, and literally most, are women, because I worked a lot with women and elevated a lot of women over the course of my career. And so I'd like to just have a brief chat with you around what could men do and what should women do?
Yeah, I mean, this is, there's so much here.
There is a lot here.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think there's something as far as, I'll start with women because I can kind of speak for my own experience. I mean, I think I do see in corporate, there are hidden kind of cultural pieces going on, playing out that I think can be very difficult. I mean, if you walk into a room and it is mainly men, as a woman, I certainly felt that, and that in itself has an impact. I think there's something about actually speaking to other women about what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. I think if there's anything you can do to create groups where you can normalize some of the challenges and actually get tips and perspectives from other women who are navigating that. And it's not about, telling each other how difficult it is, but it's like, oh, do you find this? This is something I'm experiencing when I'm going to those kind of meetings, whatever it is. I see amazing things happen when women get together. I do a lot of work with women only groups, group coaching. And there's this like, this kind of trust and rapport and people just lean in and are very prepared to be vulnerable and authentic very quickly. It's quite magical. And I didn't have that for years. I mean, I didn't have that for the first 12 of my career.
That's reality, right?
Yeah. I went out and found it. I went to like this like a women's empowerment event and had a first taste of it. So I definitely think that can really help, because then you just feel like you've got this support at your back. You've got somewhere safe where you can talk about some of what you're experiencing and move forward. And then I think as far as what men can do, I think there is something about, I know many great allies, you being one of them. But I know I have myself as a woman, I have got ingrained sort of beliefs, sexist beliefs about what the role of women are, what the role of a woman should be. I don't rationally believe them, but they're kind of there in my psyche. And I think there's something about, I try and stay curious about that. And, for example, I try and take too much control at home because I believe it's my role as a woman. And when I don't, I feel like I'm letting everyone down. But that's just a belief that I've picked up on from elsewhere. But I think if we can all, men included, be curious about those beliefs we might have, and it involves being very honest with ourselves, and it's often not very pleasant. But if we notice, almost maybe even judging a woman for how she might be conducting herself, almost rather than going to, oh, well, she's being too bolshy or whatever it might be, kind of being willing to look within and think, okay, well, what am I seeing that the same as if it was a man behaving in this way? Getting curious. I think this is how, systemic inequality is a very complex topic, but I think it really does depend on each person taking responsibility for how they are seeing things.
I think you've articulated in just a couple of minutes, and this deserves a lot more time, and which is one reason why I'm always bringing it up on this program. At least I'll do what I can to give a voice to this platform, but it can't be solved with two people. But it certainly is something. I think you've highlighted a very important area, this awareness, this self-awareness, and also that applies to men, right? And
absolutely.
To understand, don't just assume that I hear a lot of men in today's world, corporate world, talk about, and the outside the corporate world talk about, okay, well, I don't discriminate. Okay, well, it's not about that. That's really not what obviously discrimination is unacceptable, right? In any capacity whatsoever. But we're not really talking about that. We're talking more about the soft things and the understanding and the connection that women make with other women and with themselves, and that men make with women and themselves, and that men make with men as it relates to women, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of these things, a lot of the roots of maybe some inequalities that are out there in society and that type of thing stem from decades old beliefs about what the role of women should be. Some of the greatest leaders that I've ever had have been women, and I'm not saying that I know that I have some men that have been my leaders that are watching this. It's not meant to be derogatory. It's just some of the greatest leaders that I've had over the course of a very successful 29-year career have been women.
Yeah.
And it's and I've learned so much from that, not because they're a woman, but because, well, maybe partially, right? But also because there's I have a desire to connect, to learn more about this. And so I think it's a great, the connection piece that you raised is a great point, Claire. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also that there's something about, you know, as a man, you may get to see and hear things that women might not ever get to see, conversations that happen. And I remember I was very grateful to a colleague of mine. I was new in an organization, and he heard some people say, it was another man say, that the only reason I got the job is because I was a female and they wanted, you know, another female around the table. And he called it out, and he also came and told me so that I could then have a conversation. And I will always remember that man who did that. He didn't have to. He'd been there for years. He'd known this person. You know, his loyalty, if it lay anywhere, would be, you know, with this person he'd known. He didn't know me at all. But, you know, I see like that's allied behavior. He empowered me to do something about it as well. And
yeah, exactly. Don't just sit there silent, you know, when exactly. Yeah. And there's so much of that's unspoken, right? And as you know, Claire, oftentimes the unspoken words are more powerful than the spoken words, you know. And anyway, it's a great topic. Claire, we're about to run out of time. How can people, maybe you could talk for a minute or two about how can people reach out to you, to contact you, to learn more about what you're doing, and even possibly benefit from all of this wisdom that we've shared over the course of the past half hour?
Yeah, well, if you're interested in finding out more about my work, the best place to look is my website. So it's clairemackinnon.com, name spelled as it appears on LinkedIn. And there's lots of resources on there. I have a blog. You can just get a feel for the different ways I work with people. But I invite you, you can join my email list. I offer free workshops most months. I'm really keen to make my work accessible and like almost easy for people to dip their toe into coaching and some of the tools that I work with. So I'm building a kind of community. That's part of the vision that I have, I guess, for the future, is that there's a community of like-minded leaders that I'm supporting and that are supporting one another. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. That's the social platform I tend to hang out on. So I'm always open to connecting on there. If you want to say hello on there.
That's fantastic. And I just like to endorse the work that you're doing, Claire, beyond this interview in your business, because I've seen there are testimonials in Claire's LinkedIn feed from people that have been through some of her leadership workshops, and many of these workshops are free. So take advantage of it. Take that mobile phone. You know, I did a posting about this a couple of weeks ago. Take that mobile phone take a half-hour break from your workday. Take that mobile phone with some earphones and start using that. Don't use it to scroll Facebook. Okay, use it to learn something new. And the LinkedIn platform is an incredible platform for learning something new. When I was growing up in the early formative years I was born in the mid 60s, and, growing up, Encyclopedia Britannica was the thing to have in America. And right now that Encyclopedia Britannica is your mobile phone, right? Mm-hmm. It's more than a Facebook scrolling tool. And you've got things like the LinkedIn professional platform, and you can take 10 minutes and listen to one of, to what Claire's doing, or listen to a testimonial, and then contact her to learn more about it. Claire, I'll ask you after this to please put those links in the comments below this,
yes.
and that way people can easily find them as well. But Claire, I'd like to thank you for being on the program today. Thank you so much. And it's been very informative, and I'm highly appreciative.
No, I've really, really enjoyed our conversation, and it's just great to see you after all this time.
That's right. Time does fly, doesn't it? We were counting earlier and we decided not to count. So, and for all of you tuning in, thank you very much for your time, your engagement. I know most of you, Asia's sleeping now. So So you'll be seeing this on replay, but please engage, reach out, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time